in some ways, it is the bodies that have a story to tell that are more interesting, a little bit, you know. I was introduced to photography in high school and loved it right away. Photography allowed me to pause and to study things, like even study my family, that the world moves very quickly. And I could ask my parents, sit there for me and spend an hour with me. And then pretty quickly I was making nude photographs. So I loved it instantly. The way I made pictures back then is exactly the way I make pictures today. And it is about this thing that happens and their willingness to give something to me and my desire to see that other person. And eventually where I ended up, they had a very, very good photography program and an excellent graduate school. And I was exposed for the first time to really serious artists, like people who had made a decision to make their life was making work. And I didn't come from a family that where anyone was an artist. My family was very working class. And so the idea of being an artist was sort of anathema. Like, why would you do that? Like, you can't make a living doing that. So to be surrounded by people who had made a decision that this was a worthwhile way to spend your life was really inspiring. And I had teachers there who were great. I was just interested in like why we were alive. Like, it sounds very corny, but it really was like existential questions of why are we here? Why do we look the way we do? How can we, ask questions about our vulnerability and our place in the world? And asking someone to do a nude photograph is like you're immediately in a kind of intense situation, right? It's very vulnerable. My mother dying and my father dying, I photographed them obsessively. Like it was compulsive. Like it was the only way I could understand what was happening was, and it is this compulsion too of like, this thing is going to go away. This person, this human being is going to go away. This is all ephemeral. This moment is going to go away. This human being that I love so much is disappearing. You can use the photograph, which is a very romantic way of using the photograph to hold time, right? To like hold that thing, imprint it, and keep it, like a fossil or something. And I used photography to better understand death. Not that I got any great insight into it, but that they were going away and it was heartbreaking. So my mother in particular, I photographed constantly. And then after she passed away, I photographed us together. That's kind of the intention of the work, is to say, this is the reality of our human condition. And for me to make sense of it for myself, because that's where I'm headed. Right? I mean, we're all headed there. At the end of the day, there are human beings standing on this earth. It's pretty fundamental, right? Without all the trappings, all the stuff that we buy and try to dress ourselves up with, we're just standing on this earth. If you take it all away. And that is really what I want the work to be about, is that really simple existential fact of us. And so now I'm turning 60 this year. I'm photographing women who are really between 60 and 90, because that's the next, that's where I'm headed. And so it's a way of understanding that next place. And also allowing those images to enter the image culture. You can use photography in a cruel way, and you can use photography in a kind way, and that the photograph, you really have a lot of control over the way the photograph is used. And I have made a decision that I will use it if I possibly can, with as much consciousness as I can, with kindness. And that doesn't mean sentimental, and it doesn't mean romantic. It's a hard balance to find, right? It's like, how do you make something that's powerful and meaningful, but not sentimental and not cruel either? And when you're dealing with subjects that are vulnerable, like aging, it's hard. It's easy to make, like photography, I guess what I'm saying, I hope I'm being clear about this. Photography has used irony and cruelty a lot. It's easy to use that photographically to make something startling when there's this kind of cruel and punishing expectation that women look a certain way. But truthfully, it's true for men and women. It's just a little bit more punishingly obvious for women. So for better or worse, I've made my peace with, I really want my pictures to have a kindness to them and a compassion to them. There's a body of work that I want to return to that I really loved, which was putting ads in the paper in kind of random cities. Like I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I asked people to meet me at a motel to make portraits of them nude or semi-nude. That was really, really interesting. Like that idea of why, that's a kind of open documentary in a way, like that question of like, why would someone come to have a nude portrait made of them? I paid them for very little, like $25 or an hour or something. Like it wasn't a significant amount of money. And some of the people came really just for that experience of being given that kind of attention, being photographed. Like that's part of the intensity that is not really talked about very much, of why does someone pose? Why does someone want to pose? There's something very tender to me about that. It's such a combination of subtle things coming together to have it really work. Like that is part of the magic of photography, and why I work in film, like, so I should say that. So that's wildly different from digital, where you're constantly going like, take a picture, look, take a picture, look, take a picture, look. Like this is, you don't know, like you make all of these images. It's totally laborious. The camera is huge, heavy. It is this whole long drawn out thing to then ultimately see what you got. And I think just the way I was trained, I wouldn't have like 5 edits from one shot. Like, because that to me, it undermines, it seems a little silly, but it does undermine that idea that you're looking for something that really is a unique thing. And I will sometimes reject a picture if I feel like it's too relying too much on shock. Do you know what I mean? You have one picture, it tells a story. You have to select one picture. What is the story it tells? Because ultimately that's the world of that picture. It's not what I say about it. It's how it goes into the world and tells its own story. Those are the editorial decisions, right? It's like, what is the reality of this picture actually, aside from everything I brought to it, aside from the knowledge that I have of it and the model. So I work hard to find that single picture, and it will take a long time. Like it can take years, actually. Like my process is incredibly slow. So that way of trusting that your edit is the one that you want, that can take me up to 2 years, which is maddening to the people that pose for me, because they're like, what? Like these pictures on the wall, those are from 2018, 19. I'm still trying to figure out which are the right ones of the women floating. I got married for a second time, and we had all these flowers, and I didn't know what to do with them, and I didn't want them, like, this is the same compulsion, like, I don't want them to go away, right? Like that sentimentality. I was like, I'm going to put them in like a tub of water. And so I put them in a tub of water, the wedding flowers, and then I just started to look at them and I'm like, these are fascinating. Like it was October, so they kind of froze and they sunk down and some rose up and some were starting to dissolve. And very quickly I was like, this is something. I came to realize they're not that different in subject matter from photographing the body, because it is about aging and vulnerability and the ephemerality of our physical place on this planet, and that you're both, they're beautiful at one point, but they eventually, they fall apart. There was just that kind of beautiful metaphor to me. And so in the book, Sovereign, they're juxtaposed as the images of the women and the images of the flowers and the floating tubs. One thing that I'm doing is I've been photographing for so long now. So since I was 18, I'm turning 60 this year. That's a long time. And because I'm photographing people that I'm interested in and curious about and subjects that I'm interested in, inevitably I've gone back to the same people over all of these years. So now what I'm realizing is I have something like a longitudinal study of individuals over 35 to 40 years. Founded Speedwell Projects, and Speedwell Projects is a gallery that is devoted to exclusively mid to late career women, gender fluid and non-binary artists, like artists that we feel have been potentially left out of the canon of art history. They've been invisible, or not given the kind of attention that we feel they deserve, but have spent many years refining their practice and are master practitioners. The importance of Speedwell is that many artists are not very good at promoting their work. They're not very good at making sure people know about their work. So that is our mission, is to find that work. And we are doing documentaries and creating archives of these women's work. But ultimately, you're not in control of it. And the only thing that you can hope is that the truth is it's that the people who archive work know about your work. There's nothing you can do, really. Like it's museum collections, it's curators. At the end of the day, it is an institutional structure that either recognizes you or doesn't. If you are really wanting to devote your life to it, I think I may be very old school that way. I think you need to be responsible to the history of it. But I've taught for 20 years, so I'm trained in a certain way. Like I just believe that, like that's having a certain kind of integrity. But ultimately I would say, trust yourself and you will leave everything behind, and that includes your teachers. The best students I've ever had are the ones who are brave enough to kind of say at the end of the day, I don't need your feedback anymore. Do you know what I mean? It really is about that kind of bravery of separation, ultimately.